In 1995, a Sandusky Tool Company plow plane made of ebony and ivory sold at auction for $114,400, the current all-time world record for an antique hand tool. It was never even meant to be used. It sat as a showpiece in the company's own headquarters for decades before anyone thought to sell it. Most people judge an old tool on one thing: does it still work? That's wrong. Some of the most valuable tools on this list were never built to be used at all. What actually matters is who made it, how many were ever produced, and the story behind why it survived. And here's the part that should make you nervous. You've probably got one of these tools sitting in a drawer, a barn, or a dead relative's toolbox right now worth more than you'd guess. Here are 12 old hand tools that have sold for 5 and 6 figures at auction, starting with something anyone could mistake for scrap: hand-carved patriotic jointer blade. This 22-inch jointer blade wasn't decorated for a customer or a catalog. Someone carved George Washington, an American eagle, and Lady Liberty directly into the steel, purely as a personal expression of skill and patriotism. It's exactly the kind of piece that looks like vandalism to an untrained eye and a masterpiece to a collector, since the carving itself would have taken real time away from paying work to complete. No two of these were ever alike. This wasn't a production run or even a documented pattern. It's one craftsman's personal statement, which means every surviving example is effectively one of one. The detail that matters most here: the depth and crispness of the hand carving itself. This is valued almost entirely as folk art, not as a working tool. Condition of the blade's edge barely factors in. A re-sharpened edge can even hurt the value, since it risks damaging the carved detail that gives this piece all it's worth. Typical value: around $3,300 for a genuine, well-preserved example. Now, something built to be admired, not swung. Vanderbilt gold-plated ivory handle wrenches. Most wrenches on this list earn their value through rarity of production or a strange piece of corporate history. This pair did neither. They were simply gifted, gold-plated, fitted with ivory handles, and traditionally said to have been given to a member of the Vanderbilt family. An entirely ordinary tool became a personal luxury object, built to sit in a drawer and be admired, not to loosen a single bolt. There's no record of more than this one pair ever being made. No catalog, no production run, just a single custom commission. Look for genuine gold plating, not a later brass polish trying to pass for it. Ivory handles free of cracking, and any documentation connecting the pair back to the original gift. A name this famous invites imitation. Typical value: $5,980 for the confirmed pair. On to the man who built the tool that started an entire industry. Leonard Bailey Early Metallic Plane. Before Stanley became the dominant name in hand planes, Leonard Bailey was already patenting and building some of the very first metal-bodied planes, eventually forcing Stanley into a series of patent fights before Stanley acquired Bailey's patents and manufacturing rights outright. Nearly every modern bench plane still traces its basic design back to Bailey's original patents, which makes an early pre-buyout example a genuine piece of engineering history rather than just an old plane with a familiar name on it. Only a handful of these earliest patented Bailey designs are known to survive in collectible condition. Most of what's out there today is the later, mass-produced Stanley version built on his patents. The tell of an early example, casting marks and patent stamps that match Bailey's earliest documented production runs, and a lever cap and frog design distinct from the standardized parts Stanley introduced afterward. Typical value: $7,920 for a genuine early example. Now, a plane built less for using and more for showing off what was mechanically possible. Milton B. Tidy Elaborate Beveling Plane. $8,970 for a plane most people would guess was worth $20. Milton B. Tidy was a 19th century American tool maker and patent holder, and this beveling plane represents some of the most mechanically ambitious work to come out of that era's rush of plane-related patents. Few examples are known to survive today, which is part of what separates this from the countless other patented mechanisms that era produced and lost to time. The plane itself cuts precise bevels that would be fiddly to achieve any other way. Collectors love it for the sheer ambition of the engineering, not how often it actually got used on a job site. A mechanism this intricate was never going to be practical for most working carpenters. And that's exactly the point. Look for Tidy's maker's mark and patent date stamped into the body. Unmarked beveling planes with a similar mechanism exist and are frequently misattributed. And check that every moving part still works. A plane this complicated loses most of its appeal the moment one small piece is missing or seized. Typical value, $8,970 for a genuine, complete example. Now crossing the Atlantic to a plane built for exotic timber. Norris Jointer Plane. Norris built precision infill planes in England for cabinet makers working exotic hardwoods, and the company's name became one of the most respected in infill plane making during its era. An ordinary plane simply wouldn't hold its edge or its flatness against wood that dense. Few of these specific jointer planes survived the material shortages and factory disruptions of the Second World War. The ones that did are tightly held onto today, often passed down within a family of craftsmen rather than sold on the open market at all. Before buying, check the infill material, usually rosewood or another dense hardwood rather than a cheaper substitute. The flatness of the sole, the entire point of an infill jointer plane, and a lever cap that hasn't been swapped from an unrelated model. Typical value, $12,250 for a genuine, well-preserved example. Now a chest that comes with an entire family's history attached. The Hovey family tool chest. A tool chest that's worth more empty than most chests are worth full. That's the strange math behind this one. This isn't just a box of tools. It's a documented piece of one family's story, having traveled with the Hovey family from New Hampshire all the way to Ohio over the course of the 19th century. Chests like this occasionally turn up at estate sales completely misunderstood as simply a container for the tools inside, when the chest and its documented journey are actually worth more than everything sitting inside it. The thing that actually drives the price here, documented provenance tracing the chest through specific named family members, letters, bills of sale, or inscriptions and dates carved directly into the chest itself. A nearly identical chest with no story attached would be worth a small fraction of this one. Typical value, $14,950, driven almost entirely by its documented family history. Now a plow plane with one very unusual design decision. Emanuel Carpenter Plow Plane. Emanuel Carpenter of Lancaster, Pennsylvania, built plow planes that are instantly identifiable for one specific reason: a handle mounted at the back of the tool. That one small deviation from the standard design is exactly why his work is so easy to pick out in a category otherwise full of very similar-looking competing makers. Only a fraction of surviving plow planes from this era feature that rear handle placement, which makes correctly identified carpenter examples far scarcer than the broader category suggests. What sets a genuine example apart, that distinctive rear handle itself, along with maker's marks consistent with carpenter's known output, and original, unreplaced wooden fittings throughout. Typical value, $17,600 for a genuine, correctly identified example. Now a plane deliberately made scarce by its own maker. Charles Miller Gunmetal No. 50 plane. Patented in 1872, this plane would have cost a cabinet maker roughly 2 months' salary to buy new, and Charles Miller only offered it for a single year before discontinuing it, reportedly after the cost of producing it in gunmetal proved too high to sustain. A price tag that steep meant only serious, well-established tradesmen ever bought one new, further shrinking the pool of originals that could possibly have survived to today. Only a small number of confirmed examples are known to exist today, making this one of the scarcer patented planes from this era to come up for sale at all. Collectors zero in on the gunmetal construction, correct casting details matching that single year of production, and confirmation against known surviving examples. Typical value, $18,650 for a genuine, correctly dated example. onto something built purely to prove a point. A one-of-a-kind bronze multi-tool plane. No maker's mark, no patent number, no name attached to it at all. Whoever built this bronze plane never signed their work, which makes the piece itself the only evidence of who they were. This bronze plane switches between several different jobs by swapping out parts. It's genuinely clever engineering, even though separate individual tools could usually do the same work faster on their own. That's the whole point of this entry. Its value today has almost nothing to do with usefulness and everything to do with ambition. An unknown maker proving what was mechanically possible, far beyond what any customer actually needed. Every swappable component has to be present and correctly fitted. The bronze construction has to be genuine, not a later plated substitute, and the whole configuration needs to match documented originals, not a composite built later from unrelated spare parts. Typical value: $19,550 for a complete, correctly configured example. Now onto a plane tied to one of the most important and overlooked stories in this entire hobby: the Cesar Cellor cornice molding plane. Cesar Cellor was born into slavery. He worked under toolmaker Francis Nicholson, became his apprentice, and was freed after Nicholson's death. Cellor went on to build tools for the rest of his life. Today, he's recognized as the earliest documented African-American tool maker in the United States. A genuine surviving example of his work is a piece of history far beyond the tool trade, one of the very few objects that lets this story be told through a real, working artifact, not just written records. What collectors verify: Cellor's own maker's stamp against documented genuine examples. This history is exactly the kind that attracts forgeries, along with the condition and completeness of the molding profile itself. Typical value: $27,950 for a documented, correctly attributed example. Now, believed to be entirely unique, Leonard Bailey bronze scraper. Believed to be the only one of its kind, this bronze scraper is thought to date from Bailey's earliest development work, before his later, better-known metallic planes made him famous. A genuine, one-of-a-kind survival from a maker this significant sits in a different tier of rarity from almost everything else on this list. Most rare tools still have a handful of known siblings in other collections. As far as anyone has established, this one simply doesn't. Where the earlier Bailey plane on this list represents the design that changed the industry, this scraper represents something rarer still: the experimentation that came before it, a step in the story that, as far as anyone knows, was never repeated. What collectors verify: documented history tracing the piece to Bailey's early career, bronze construction consistent with his known early experiments, and supporting paperwork from the auction house that originally authenticated it. Typical value: $32,200 for what's believed to be a genuinely unique surviving piece. On to the tool that broke the record for the most expensive hand tool ever sold: the Sandusky Tool Company ebony and ivory plow plane. This is the current all-time world record holder for any antique hand tool sold at auction. It was made in 1876 from ebony and ivory, rather than ordinary wood and brass. It was built purely as a showpiece, never meant for a workbench at all, and it sat on display in the Sandusky Tool Company's own headquarters for decades. When the company disbanded in 1934, a private collector bought it. It stayed within that same family until it finally reached auction in 1995, where it sold for $114,400, a record that has stood for 3 decades since. Before anyone even considers a price, genuine ebony and ivory construction, not a stained substitute wood. Documented ownership history tracing back to the Sandusky Company itself, and confirmation that this specific plane matches archival photographs from the original factory display. Typical value: $114,400, the record sale, and still the highest price ever paid for an antique hand tool. What nobody tells you before you sell. Now, before you go check your own workshop, a few things worth knowing, because the wrong move here can cost you real money. Never clean, polish, or refinish a tool before it's been properly identified. Stripped Japanning, that original black lacquer finish, or a freshly sanded handle can destroy exactly the originality a serious collector is paying for. A single afternoon of cleaning it up has turned $1,000 tools into $20 ones permanently. Keep every tool with its original case, box, or documentation. Provenance alone has driven several of the prices on this list far higher than the tool itself would otherwise command. Photograph every maker's mark. Check real completed sales, not asking prices, and get a genuine appraisal before accepting a quick offer. Then, tell us what you found. If you're still with us, hit subscribe. I go looking for exactly this kind of history in old workshops and estate sales every week, and I'd rather teach you to recognize it than see it thrown in a skip.